Hi guys, welcome to another How Schmidt Draws video tutorial. Today's topic is a submerged character. Today I would like to show you how I draw a character on top of the background, which I showed you how to paint last week, this underwater scene. And since it's mermaid, I did a mermaid. Yes, so how do I get from this sketch to the final version? I didn't have a very clean sketch, as you can see. I sort of worked directly on the sketch which I was happy with, and I started by selecting my main shape. My main shape is this body, arm and tail, and I don't have that many shapes. I have the t-shirt, the hair, the fin, and these are my solids which I can edit to the very end, because this main shape, when I change that later, everything will be like erased by that. So it's really good to have these, because I work on clipping masks on top and then I shade this body, adding new colors, and that's super easy with the clipping mask. I do work very messily here, I must admit, because the cleaner way would be to select all your shapes first and then start shading. But yes, I always jump around when working, and it would have been better for this tutorial for me not to be jumping around, but I selected my areas and already added some color on a new layer which is set to clipping mask on top. Also the t-shirt, I already worked that in because I had this idea of it being slightly translucent and wanted to have that skin peeking through. And because you can see a bit of the boob looking under that t-shirt, I wanted to have this character a bit sexy, because to me mermaids are sexy. And so this isn't really for decency, it's just for decoration, and I liked her with it with her little star on top. I think this t-shirt is just because she likes this little shirt. Yes. Anyhow. So you can see that my sketch is still pretty dark. But then I lighten it because I don't want to later have worked roughly under the sketch and not have seen where I didn't clean it up properly. So I lighten the sketch. Later I will sort of color it in a bit in a red color, because I really like adding some red to the character in this loads of blue tones. See, and I already added shading to the hair, which I didn't really need, but I was sort of working all around, sort of trying to tie the character together to find the right colors and find the right shading. So it's before I add all this light which is added to the character, I wanted to have some ground shading, like also the face working, which I did again on separate layers. And and I had this idea of super strong light coming from it on the top and then it getting gradually lighter to the bottom, but her face being really light. And also that the hair would be hit by the light, like on the planes all facing upwards, I would have super strong light. That was like my intent on this picture, on this painting picture. Probably the most interesting part about this is the reflections, and I started those pretty early on, but I will change them around throughout the whole painting, because they quickly felt, at the beginning I thought, oh, they look cool, but then they looked like weird veins. So I had a lot of learning to do while painting this. So I was like, okay, in the face, it really feels weird if they're too bright, because they just look like veins. So how do I sort of soften them so that they look glowy but don't feel like weird lines? And then I sort of noticed that I had to paint a bit more of the rest to actually be able to tackle these. I tackled them way too early. I started them up and then I reworked them later because, yes, getting the character to a point where it's actually finished and then adding those ripples makes most sense, to be honest. I don't know why I started doing them at the beginning. Probably just because I wanted to find out how they could work. So yes, I'm adding tons of layers here, and I'm not going to go through each layer because this is really just, it's all the same procedure by sort of adding new layer effects, adding shading. I often use multiply for my shadows, soft light for lighting, and I used lasso tool in this painting more because I feel like I could really benefit of using it, and this painting really did. So I sort of selected shapes and then painted softly in them, because that way you get a nice mix of hard edges and soft edges. Also the what's the word scales. I used selections of those as well, and then transformed them a bit and added more with new selections, and then just painted softly in them and then erased parts of that. So that also was a really new way of working on this painting. And underwater, what you have is that the colors are a bit bluer, obviously, here, because the painting is very blue. So I added reflected blue in the shadows all the time. So I do have my standard colors, but I already from the beginning added some blue in there. Just in the head I had less, because that was closest to the light source, but the further down I had more blues. And I kept then refining the painted on ripples. I again used this. I really like using this speckled paintbrush because that has a kind of hard edge and it has a soft edge to the side, so it's not completely airbrushy and it has a texture to it. But on those, then I sort of went in and erased some hard edges on there as well. So at some point I just sort of grouped my whole character and started working on layers on top of that again, which are unclipping masks. And that helped me in that way, because I could sort of just paint soft light over all layers but still work within the complete character and not go over the character. So that's really, really helpful, I find. And yes, at some point it's just a matter of detailing again. The ripples I painted with set to overlay, and I find that works really nicely because overlay gives you a brightness to it. It brightens up the colors underneath, and I feel like that these ripples need to be really bright where they hit the character. And these ripples are something which are a matter of following the body shape and finding a good stylization for them, because if I do paint them too much like in reality on the character in the reference, I always felt that they looked a bit too noisy and or like veins. So finding the right rhythm for these is the hardest bit, and you just have to remember to follow the shape of the character, and that they obviously are only on the surface which are actually hit by light, so like not underneath the character. I did add some on the hair as well, but less there because I felt that they didn't need that. What I did eventually was that I duplicated my whole set of the mermaid and then set that to multiply, because I felt that she was actually too light, and darkened the whole thing, and that gave it a really nice, it intensified the underwatery feel, because often when you work you don't notice that you're not working intensively enough, and by multiplying the whole thing on top, you get this bam to the character. This brightness, this strength. And then I erased parts again, which I wanted to have lighter. So then I have another layer of shading in that way. What I also did was I changed a bit of the background. I just went in and locked the turquoise layer. It's just one layer. And I wanted it to be a bit more green at the bottom than at the top. Because I had used the same color at the top and the bottom, and I thought that some variance would be really nice here. These green changes to the background are probably not very obvious to you, but it was important for me to do them. And last but not least, I added the reflection on top of the water. That is something which is really abstract, and I just looked at the reference how that was done, and that's really more, you can really see the character more in that reflection. I just added colors which from the character and sort of tried to paint one after the other, which would be in their hierarchy, right? And just picking colors from the character in the right order on top and painting in the highlighted parts of the waves, because that's what was also in the reference, and just finding pretty shapes and within these. And I think this is what gives the painting the finishing touch and which makes it really pretty. And yes, I feel like I leveled up in this painting because I've tried something new and I haven't done this before. And I know if I had have tried this without a reference, it might have been a nice drawing, but it wouldn't have any grounding in reality, and it wouldn't be half as nice as this. So I really can't stress enough, use references. You don't have to stick to them rigidly, but use them to inspire yourself and draw lovely stuff. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I know it was a bit hard to follow at some points because I'm not going in this tutorial through step by step what I'm actually painting, but I was just basically trying to explain how I go about it and how I think about lighting and how I just go through painting this. So yes, thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.